Hi guys, it's Duke Sparrow, and hope y'all are having a good day. So I've been thinking about something all while I was playing Left 4 Dead on Steam, and it occurred to me that I had a specific memory which involved me thinking about Left 4 Dead 1. Now I'm talking about the bare bones original, meaning this was the game that had no melee weapons, no chargers, no spitters, no jockeys, no mutations, and sadly most of all, no Ellis. Basically speaking, I've thought so much about Left 4 Dead 1 that it had me thinking about why no one gives it any attention these days. Now, obviously, the answer to that question is that Left 4 Dead 2 is the superior game. I mean, I can't really blame everybody for thinking so because given how massive the modding community is on the game, like, there's a plethora of mods here and there that make the game absolutely timeless in more ways than one. That it's no surprise that when you look online, especially like on YouTube, there's like a vast majority of people who play the game on mods. They have like custom campaigns here and there and so forth. Left 4 Dead 2 is an amazing game, no doubt. I mean, hell, I basically remember playing the shit out of this game back in 2009. And this was literally a year after the first game. It's nothing short of a miracle how amazing this game turned out to be. But I've been thinking real hard about the OG Left 4 Dead game. And it's for good reason, because despite the fact you can play the Left 4 Dead 1 maps on the Left 4 Dead 2 port, which is the version everyone settles with given how incredibly accessible Left 4 Dead 2 is, Left 4 Dead 1 is overshadowed by Left 4 Dead 2, and for obvious reasons. The sequel has much more expansive sandbox when it comes to weapons, enemy variety, maps, and custom games. And comparing it to Left 4 Dead 1, it's no surprise people play Left 4 Dead 2 over Left 4 Dead 1. And with that reason, I wanted to express my love for the original Left 4 Dead because it holds such a special place in my heart. Let me tell you all a story. It was Christmas of 2008, and I remember specifically seeing this gift in the shape of a video game cover, and I had gotten my gifts, which were Legos, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and the new shoes. I got the gift and I pulled out what was the original Left 4 Dead's cover, all in its glory. Now, mind you, I honestly had no idea about Left 4 Dead. I wasn't even aware about it. I mean, I've seen images of what I now learned was the beta build for Left 4 Dead, where it showed like, what was it? Zoe herself was like jumping in the air and there was like zombies below her. And I remember asking my dad about it, about what it was, and he told me it was a zombie game, and that he got it from GameStop after an employee told him that it was the top zombie game of the year. Now, having played Call of Duty World at War Zombies the same year months prior, I was already interested. Here's a photo of my dad took of me holding the cover that Christmas morning. Here's the thing. I was already a massive fan of the zombie game genre. I played Dead Rising in 2006, and this was like, 2 years before it got its own sequel, which to this day is one of my favorite zombie games, so you can imagine the anxiety I had when I put the disc of Left 4 Dead into my Xbox 360, and upon seeing the intro, which introduced us to our main survivors, Bill, Zoe, Lewis, and Francis, fighting back against the infected, I was already hooked, and truth be told, I started playing around 8 a.m. and kept playing by 7 p.m. And by then, I already beaten the 4 campaigns and I've gotten a huge chunk of the achievement, which I'll admit was so addicting to get given how replayable the game was. And even then, I couldn't stop playing the game. The versus mode was so awesome, and it allowed you to play as the infected. And if you know me, I love multiplayer games where there are 2 teams fighting against each other, where it comes to one team fighting for one specific goal, which for the survivors case, salvation, and for the infected, preventing the survivors from reaching said salvation. It was so fucking awesome that by the time Left 4 Dead 2 was announced, I was super hyped and literally begged my dad to go get me the sequel because I was such a massive fan of the first game. Now, why did I tell you guys this story, you may ask? Well, it's because it's no secret that Left 4 Dead 2 is the better game out of the two, and that is something I will not deny. In fact, it's a wagon I'm willing to jump on and embrace, but I figured I would make this video and let y'all put something in perspective. Left 4 Dead 1 basically laid the groundwork for what would be expanded upon in Left 4 Dead 2, and the sequel would build upon that groundwork by giving us an expanded amount of content, something which the original game sorely lacked. So what was lacking in the original was obviously the melee weapons introduced in the sequels. Mutations were basically not even a thing until the sequel came along. We only had the first 5 special infected. The Smoker, the Hunter, the Boomer, the Witch, and the Tank. Those were the only special infected. So without the Jockey, Charger, and Spitter, the original game was arguably easier compared to the sequel. Now, is Left 4 Dead 1 the better game when it comes to survivors' personalities? Absolutely not. In fact, I'm willing to argue and say the survivors in Left 4 Dead 2 had a much more fleshed out personality for each character. Nick was the nihilist. Coach was basically Bill's counterpart in being the elder leader of the group. Ellis was the naive, immature one. Rochelle was the level-headed female of the group, and we knew this because Valve managed to have each of the 4 characters be able to have a more fleshed out interpretation for them. The problem with the OG survivors was that they barely talked, and aside from occasionally doing so, but there actually was enough for us to see what the personality for each of the survivors were. Bill, like Coach, was the elder former veteran turned zombie killer. Francis is a pessimistic motorcycle gang member. Lewis is an optimistic office worker. And Zoe is a movie-obsessed college student. The reason we knew about this was from the what little dialogue they had. And there were, again, enough to show us the personality for each of the 4 characters, even if there was barely any dialogue aside from them mentioning a safe zone and Francis occasionally saying he hates everything. I've come to learn that less is more. And that is why, to me, while the Left 4 Dead 2 survivors are better written when it comes to a more fleshed out personality, the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors are the more iconic. Same with how minuscule of the weapons that were at hand. In the original game, we only had 2 Tier 1 weapons, an Uzi, a shotgun. For the Tier 2 weapons, we had the assault rifle, a hunting rifle, and semi-auto shotgun. 2 grenades in the form of Molotovs and pipe bombs, and that was that. The reason I'm saying minuscule is because it really is. I mean, if you compare Left 4 Dead 1 to the sequel's arsenal, it's a day and night difference. And obviously with the Left 4 Dead 2 port allowing us to play the Left 4 Dead 1 campaigns, meant that the arsenal introduced in the sequel is now used here as well, which was formerly not a thing. Mutation was not limited to the Left 4 Dead 2 campaigns, as the OG campaigns were also given the mutation treatment. The reason I bring this up is that Left 4 Dead 1, while it had so little, it actually helped me to learn sometimes less is more. And it goes to show that to this day, it still is a classic game that is still talked about nowadays, alongside its much more successful sequel. Back 4 Blood was a failed attempt in recreating the magic that the original games had, and that only made me appreciate the OG game even more. Not to mention, I have such a meaningful connection to it that is literally a massive part of my childhood. Left 4 Dead 1 was meant to have so little compared to its sequel, whereas the sequel was meant to have so much more compared to its predecessor. And you know what? If you prefer the Left 4 Dead 2 game over the OG, by all means, I can totally understand. But I kind of wanted to put into perspective how special the OG game was to so many people, including myself. And I kind of wanted to give y'all Left 4 Dead 1 another try and appreciate what it did right and how Left 4 Dead 2 expanded on its concept. That's going to be it for today's video, and if you guys want, I'd be more than happy to do more videos on Left 4 Dead because, again, I'm a massive fan of the series, as is, and I'm sure the rest of you are. But yeah, this is Duke Sparrow, signing off.